Juliana Redding's story haunts anyone who followed it, even though closure seems unlikely. Many young dreamers move to LA to break into the entertainment industry. Some have great occupations, but others return home discouraged or remain hoping for the big break. This included 21-year-old aspiring actress Juliana Redding, who moved from Arizona to Santa Monica in 2005. However, her path would take multiple stunning turns before ending in tragedy. Her verdict left many wondering if justice was done. Juliana's family suffers with the idea that her horrific attacker may never be punished. Let's go into the case. Overall, Juliana Redding's adolescence in Tucson, Arizona, at South Point Catholic High School, was happy and fulfilling. After graduating, she moved to California to model while remaining near to her family. Juliana had once informed her parents, Patricia and Greg, that she hoped to operate a shop someday, while her ultimate aim was to build and run her own business. Even after going to Los Angeles, Juliana remained very close to her family. She called her parents periodically to share information about her life and future plans. They texted constantly, and she visited them in Tucson periodically. By 2008, Juliana was enrolled at Santa Monica College and living independently in a cozy bungalow in Santa Monica. While exploring modeling and acting chances, Juliana worked as a waitress to help support herself. She seemed content with her life at the time, but everything took a deadly turn on March 16th of that year. It all began when her mother, Patricia, found she couldn't reach her daughter. What's known is that on March 15th, Juliana had gone out to play golf before heading home to her bungalow, where she spent the evening watching TV, primarily Seinfeld reruns. The next evening, Patricia received a call from Juliana's neighbors, who reported they hadn't seen her all day. They mentioned that her dog was still inside the bungalow, but the house itself seemed eerily silent and vacant. Growing increasingly worried, Patricia tried ringing Juliana's phone, hoping she would answer, but the calls went unanswered, and Juliana never phoned her mother back. At first, Patricia believed Juliana was just busy and would call back later. But by 6 p.m., after still hearing nothing, she knew something was badly wrong. She decided to contact the police and sought a welfare check, detailing the event in full. Officers came at Juliana's bungalow and investigated the outside, initially finding nothing out of the norm. Her car was still parked in the driveway, a signal that she should have been home, yet there were no sounds or evidence of movement inside. When authorities entered the house, however, they soon discovered something was amiss. A strong scent of natural gas filled the air, and they spotted a candle burning near the main entrance. Upon looking further, they realized that the gas smell was coming from the stove, which had been left on purposely. However, the burner hadn't been ignited, meaning the entire cottage was like a ticking time bomb. Then, officers unearthed an even more awful find. After examining the home, they spotted Juliana in the bedroom toward the back of the house. Tragically, she was already killed, and it was quickly clear to detectives that she had been strangled. The scene also presented clear signs that she had fought back. The apartment revealed the indicators of a furious battle. Evidence subsequently revealed that Juliana's own DNA was found beneath her fingernails, suggesting she had desperately sought to pull her attacker's hands from her throat. While there were few evidence pointing to who was involved, one aspect jumped out. Whoever broke into the home had deliberately turned on the gas in an apparent attempt to blow up the bungalow and remove any sign of their presence. Had the intruder's scheme worked, much of the evidence at the scene would have been erased. The gas from the stove was clearly designed to ignite from the close candle and spark an explosion. Fortunately, because of the bungalow's older construction, the gas never gathered enough to detonate. Investigators then began reconstructing what they suspected happened in Juliana's last moments. They determined that on the night of March 15th at 10 p.m., someone had broken into Juliana's apartment. Once inside, the burglar attacked her, at one point slamming her skull on the floor and suffering a major injury. Based on the duration and severity of the struggle, officials believe that the assailant may have been taken off guard by Juliana's aggressive resistance, ultimately resorting to strangling her. Phone records eventually suggested that Juliana had tried to contact 911, but the connection was terminated before it went through, a sad sign that she had sought to obtain aid in her final minutes. The neighbors who had phoned Patricia told police they hadn't noticed anything particularly unusual in or around the cottage, though they did recollect hearing furniture being moved and someone shouting about 9:53 the night before. Unfortunately, they hadn't thought much of it at the time. As they said afterward, nothing had seemed unusually out of place. It could have easily been a modest gathering or a minor quarrel. At the scene, officials obtained multiple pieces of significant evidence, including various DNA samples found on Juliana's clothing, her throat, her phone, and the front door. It would take some time for the lab to process these samples and uncover who might have been inside her home. In the meantime, detectives began interviewing Juliana's friends and relatives, hoping to piece together more details about her life and any potential ties that would point to a suspect. Juliana's father urged that detectives contact John Gilmore, a man with whom Juliana had been in an on-and-off relationship. While speaking with detectives, he stated that he had always been concerned about his daughter's contact with Gilmore, describing him as someone with a violent temper. His suspicions were not unwarranted. Gilmore had once kicked in Juliana's car door and even broken into her home during a past argument. When detectives uncovered this, they felt they could finally have the lead they needed. They immediately began searching for John Gilmore, and it didn't take long to discover him. During examination, Gilmore testified that he had gone to Juliana's house on Sunday morning, but claimed that despite seeing her car parked in the driveway, she never opened the door. He informed authorities that he hadn't seen any whiff of gas, but when he peeked through the security gate, he could see a candle burning inside. Gilmore indicated that he and Juliana occasionally disagreed, and when questioned about the violent episodes her family had related, he confirmed that they had fought on several occasions. One particular argument had taken place on Saturday night. According to Gilmore, the tension started when he texted Juliana to tell her he'd be spending the evening with some pals. She apparently became irritated and hung up on him. After that, she elected to go out with one of her own friends, while Gilmore attended a house party a few miles from her residence. The two remained chatting throughout the evening. However, their texts suggested a lingering unease. Around 10 p.m., Juliana stopped reacting altogether. The next morning, when Gilmore still hadn't heard from her, he tried calling and sending numerous more SMS but got no reply. Concerned, he proceeded to stop by her bungalow, but when he couldn't find her, he eventually left. Although Gilmore was initially the major suspect, security footage from the night of the murder soon absolved him. Surveillance cameras showed him visiting a Jack-in-the-Box restaurant and an adjacent convenience shop between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. Additionally, several persons from the house party attested that he had been there during the time the crime took place, effectively ruling him out as the killer. When forensic tests confirmed that most of the DNA found, despite collecting DNA samples from everyone they examined, none matched the evidence found from the crime location. It was around this time that another man entered the picture, a physician named Munir. Further research discovered that Juliana and Munir had first met in 2007 while she was working at a restaurant, signaling the start of a fresh lead in the case. Juliana reportedly made a big impact on Munir, as he immediately handed her a position as his medical assistant. She consented, probably delighted for the potential to earn more money, as working as a restaurant hostess or server seldom paid much, especially given the ongoing stress of dealing with rude visitors. However, their relationship gradually evolved beyond a professional one. Juliana ultimately accepted to move in with Munir, and during that time, he supplied for her and permitted her to stay in his lavish Beverly Hills residence. At first, the arrangement may have looked thrilling and fulfilling, but before long, Juliana was apprehensive about Munir's attitude. She began to suspect that he was being too possessive, probably even obsessed with her. At one point, Munir even proposed to Juliana, vowing to give her a luxury car for her 21st birthday. As a wealthy guy, he definitely had the means to provide for her. Yet what might have seemed generous soon began to look awkward. Juliana was uncomfortable, especially since Munir had a reputation for showering women with costly presents like automobiles and jewels. It's debatable whether Munir was inflating their relationship out of infatuation or just misread Juliana's intentions. Either way, his attitude got increasingly odd, and Juliana soon understood she wanted to remove herself. Determined to regain control of her life, she decided to stop things with him. She ultimately moved out, settling into the Santa Monica bungalow her father helped pay for, hoping to start new. It was really remarkable that Juliana and Munir kept in touch even after their breakup, which by all accounts had ended on good terms. One of Juliana's acquaintances later stated that the two, along with her, had once taken a vacation to Las Vegas to celebrate a friend's birthday. But things weren't as innocuous as they seemed. When Juliana's father started to probe into Munir's background, he found something deeply unsettling. Munir was not only married, but also had 3 children living in Lebanon. When he informed Juliana what he had found, he was confident that Munir's family had no idea about her or the other women he had been associated with. The discovery left Juliana astonished and heartbroken. She instantly told her father that she wanted nothing further to do with Munir. It was absolutely the perfect decision to terminate contact altogether and instruct him never to approach her again. Despite the enmity between them, Juliana's father, Greg, who worked as a pharmacist, continued to stay in contact with Munir. The two had been working on a commercial venture, but the deal ultimately came apart when Greg began to fear that Munir might be running his businesses in a questionable, probably criminal way. As more data surfaced, it became increasingly clear that Munir was not the reputable professional he had portrayed to be. Investigators couldn't ignore the disconcerting coincidence that Juliana's death occurred barely a week after the business deal collapsed. This period led them to suspect that Munir might know significantly more than he was passing on. However, his DNA was not collected at the crime scene, and by that time, he had already left the country, making it difficult for police to check him promptly. In the meantime, they decided to delve deeper into his background. And what they found would generate even more suspicions. Investigators began checking into the ladies who had previously worked with Munir, as his background with them was reportedly questionable. While there wasn't yet physical proof to back it up, detectives suspected that the female DNA obtained at the crime scene could somehow be related to him. Most of Munir's earlier female friends had either cut ties with him or knew nothing about Juliana, but suspicions rose when investigators discovered his past contact with a 47-year-old woman called Kelly Supak. Within barely 18 months, Munir had given more than $1 million to Pak through many huge payments. She had before worked as a real estate broker and had been involved in many of his business initiatives. Though officials couldn't yet demonstrate she had any role in Juliana's death, they decided to have Pak placed under surveillance, intending to secretly acquire a DNA sample without notifying her, a step that would shortly become important to the case. Investigators understood they had to tread carefully. If Kelly Supak was implicated, alerting her could risk tipping off Munir as well, so they opted to acquire her DNA covertly. Their patience eventually paid off when they collected a discarded cigarette butt from her, which was then sent for forensic testing. The results were groundbreaking. Pak's DNA matched the ones found throughout Juliana's bungalow. This revealed she had been present during the action, and although Munir hadn't yet returned to the US, it plainly implied he was also participating in some way. Pak was shortly caught and charged with Juliana's murder. Meanwhile, Munir departed without a trace, allegedly departing mere days after learning of her incarceration. Investigators suspected he had likely gone to Lebanon to avoid capture. Yet one critical question still remained. What was the motive behind Juliana's killing? Investigators theorized that Munir had paid Kelly Supak to attack Juliana as an act of retaliation, perhaps because he was angry over their separation or upset because his unsuccessful business transaction with Greg had ruined his reputation. One widespread perspective said that Munir dispatched Pak to see Juliana in a violent manner, attempting to frighten Greg into reconsidering their business deal. While this remains speculation, authorities believe the encounter escalated when Juliana fought back, leading to a violent brawl that culminated with her death. During the court proceedings, it was revealed that Munir had agreed to pay Pak a six-figure payment to carry out his plot. This notion acquired credibility after reports from the Los Angeles Times indicated that Pak had a documented history of intimidating those who argued with Munir, making it all the more possible that she was his enforcer in this awful conspiracy. Pak has allegedly carried out similar acts of intimidation for Munir in the past. She was alleged to have threatened one of his clients who failed to make promised payments, and on another occasion, she reportedly menaced a bank manager who had canceled a commercial arrangement with him. When charged with second-degree murder, Pak pleaded not guilty. Despite the overwhelming evidence from Juliana's home, including DNA proof placing her at the spot, her defense team maintained that Munir, still overseas at the time, was the sole link between the two ladies, arguing they had never actually met. The prosecution hoped to convey the case that Pak had been functioning as Munir's enforcer, and that her attempt to intimidate Juliana had spiraled into murder. However, this strategy broke apart in court. The judge concluded that prosecutors could not offer the idea since there wasn't enough specific evidence to support it. As a result, the state was required to rely largely on the physical evidence recovered at the scene, most notably the DNA that tied Pak to the crime. Prosecutors highlighted that Pak was a tall, physically imposing lady, nearly 6 feet in height, and conducted herself with the confidence and authority of someone who could readily serve as an enforcer if directed by Munir. Her presence was reported to be intimidating, with a domineering attitude that few could stand up to. As additional evidence gathered, it appeared increasingly likely that she would be convicted of Juliana's murder. Pak's DNA was found in various areas throughout the bungalow: on Juliana's clothing, the front door, the locks, her phone, and most incriminating of all, on Juliana's throat. Investigators also retrieved her fingerprint and a dab of her blood on a dish in the kitchen sink. The prosecution maintained that this was clear proof of her being inside the apartment that night, and that, since the two ladies had never met, Pak had no reason to be there except to carry out an attack ordered by Munir. Prosecutors claimed it was plain that Juliana had been forcefully strangled, pointing to the presence of Pak's DNA on her throat as clear proof of her culpability. But holding Pak accountable would be significantly more complicated. Just like she had supposedly fought valiantly the night she saw Juliana, she wasn't about to go down gently in court. Her defense team came prepared to contest every piece of evidence, adopting every way available to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. One additional suggestion provided by Pak's defense questioned whether she had even been inside Juliana's bungalow the night of the murder. They said that the lack of eyewitnesses generated too much uncertainty about what truly transpired. The defense also presented the potential of secondary DNA transmission, suggesting Pak's DNA might have turned up at the crime scene through indirect contact, possibly via an object she had handled that later made its way into Juliana's home. It was a risky argument, but one meant to establish reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. The defense built on this argument by demonstrating how DNA can transfer when two persons handle the same thing, meaning one person's genetic material can unknowingly be transmitted to another. In plain terms, investigators felt that Pak might have unintentionally transferred Juliana's DNA to the crime scene by touching anything previously handled by the genuine culprit. They pointed to a specific example, a towel Pak may have used months earlier while visiting Munir's Beverly Hills mansion. According to the defense, the murderer may have later used the same towel to wipe away fingerprints or evidence after the attack, accidentally transferring Pak's DNA to the cottage. They further noted that because Pak was a frequent guest at Munir's flat, and since Juliana had once lived there, it was quite probable that her DNA had been transferred unintentionally rather than through direct touch during the crime. Addressing Munir's purported role in the crime, the defense stated that neither his split from Juliana's father nor a failed business venture formed a strong enough reason for murder. Since Pak and Munir had a history of professional interactions, they maintained that the big payments received from Munir to Pak were only typical business transactions, money he previously owed her. The prosecution, on the other hand, gave a substantially poorer image. They stated that Munir had once bragged about recruiting a girl he defined as a female James Bond, suggesting she was paid to carry out secret and perhaps deadly activities. Prosecutors argued that Munir had both the motive and means to order a kill on Juliana. As the trial continued, the case took increasingly bizarre and obviously unbelievable turns. According to the LA Times, phone records revealed that Pak had contacted Juliana's office and was seen outside her bungalow the night before the attack. Since the two ladies had never met, officials assumed Pak had sought out to discover Juliana's schedule and acquire access to her apartment while preparing the assault. Moreover, both Pak and Munir were under investigation for their alleged involvement in a health insurance fraud scheme that authorities were still actively pursuing at the time. When the jury ultimately ruled in Pak's favor, the conclusion startled everyone. The trial had dragged on until 2013, an extraordinarily lengthy time for such processes. But in the end, Kelly Sue Pak was declared not guilty. As she exited the courthouse, Juliana's friends and family shouted in anger, shouting that Pak knew she was guilty and that justice had gone tragically wrong. In the end, no one was ever held accountable for Juliana's death, and the one guy who connected all the crucial participants in the case was never even questioned, simply because he had vanished. The judgment left Juliana's family unhappy. Understandably distressed, they submitted a written statement expressing their extreme regret and fury over the absence of justice. To make matters worse, Lebanon, Munir's own country, has no extradition treaty with the United States and is famed for shielding its nationals from foreign prosecution. This meant Munir would never face repercussions for his claimed role in the crime as long as he stayed there. Her family struggled to fathom how such solid evidence against both Pak and Munir failed to win a conviction. Over time, they've tried to come to terms with the court's verdict. Juliana's mother, Patricia, now spends time painting in her daughter's room, a humble effort that helps her feel a little enduring connection to Juliana. Even after all these years, Patricia maintains that painting has become her way of coping, a form of emotional release that helps her to create her greatest work when she's feeling most vulnerable. At times, she feels as though she, Greg, and their son Patrick are still locked in 2008, the year of the attack, unable to entirely move on, still tormented by the idea that Pak and Munir walked free. Still, Patricia has managed to establish a revitalized sense of purpose through her work and her journey of recovery from breast cancer. She's learned to look for light even at the darkest periods. As for Munir, he is claimed to have rejoined with his true family in Lebanon after left the United States, and he continues to insist on his innocence to this very day. He has never been questioned or formally charged in connection with Juliana's case. In 2015, he was arrested in Germany on charges of medical fraud, but the case never went anywhere. Authorities stated he enabled a physician's assistant, someone with no formal medical training, to do surgeries he had committed to handle himself. More than 20 of his victims ultimately came forward, saying the operations left them permanently damaged. For reasons that remain inexplicable, he was released and returned to Lebanon, where he is now again suspected of practicing medical fraud. When authorities found that Pak was also related to the 2015 German crime, she was arrested as well. She faced charges of conspiracy, patient fraud, performing botched procedures that caused deformity, and robbing insurance companies of $150 million. But after posting a $1.5 million bond, she managed to escape under the authorities' hands once more. There's no easy answer or satisfactory finish to Juliana's narrative. Once it became obvious that Munir had been living a double life, her family did everything they could to protect her. Yet, he ultimately walked away without facing any major punishment. Some may term this an unsettled case, but deep down, everyone knows the truth, no matter how much strong proof was offered. Sometimes the legal system simply fails. People place their faith in due process, expecting it will prevent such failures from recurring, but too often it doesn't. All we can hope is that Juliana's circumstance acts as a reminder and a lesson for the future. If you found this case entertaining, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We upload criminal case videos every night. Until next time, be sharp, be vigilant.